Welcome to Alaska Weather, a production of Alaska Public Media and the National Weather Service, Alaska Region. Produced and broadcast daily from the studios of KAKM, Alaska Weather provides complete forecasts, public, marine, and aviation for all of Alaska. Alaska Weather is made possible by the following sponsors.
The National Weather Service.
Hello and welcome to another edition of Alaska Weather. I'm meteorologist Kimberley Hoeppner, and on this Wednesday, July 8th, 2015, we'll be going over your public, marine, and aviation forecasts. When we're not here, you can always find our information online at www.arh.noaa.gov, or you can always call our weather information line at 1-800-472-0391. And as always, check out our social media on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. Now on to the hot topics of the day. We have smoke issues continuing across the central interior near the Tanana Valley, and we expect this to run into tomorrow evening around 9 p.m. So this is for reduced visibilities down to 1 mile or less at times. There'll be some improvement during the afternoon, and then overnight we're expecting visibilities to go down again. Now the area in yellow across the northern Brooks Range here, we have a small stream advisory as we had between 1 to 1.5 inches of rainfall during the last 24 hours. So expect those streams to continue to drain along the Brooks Range from along Howard Pass over to Adigan Pass. And that is going to be going out through this evening at 9:15 p.m. Now, taking a look at the fire hazards across the state, you should be cautious across most of the southern areas of the state and across the interior and on out towards the Seward Peninsula. Also, a little bit of drying had occurred today across the southeast. So in all areas of the state, please be aware that these fire hazards, drier conditions, and we hadn't had a lot of rain. And with the last rainfall, most of the rain was seen just to the north along the Brooks Range. So do be careful out there if you're lighting some fires to be sure to put those out. Now, let me step out of your way here just a moment. Here's our weather headlines for the day. We have low pressure across the state, which is going to act to cool temperatures through Friday, and we'll also see a wetter pattern statewide. The area of smoke is going to continue for the central interior with improvement during the afternoon, and rainfall totals across the Brick Range were impressive, between 1 to 1.5 inches. Now taking a look at the satellite image out towards the west, here's the Bering. We have two area of low pressure systems spinning in the Bering, and you can see that on the satellite with some moisture streaming just to the south of the Aleutian chain. Put that into motion one more time and you can see these circulations here just spinning around the Bering and not advancing anywhere. Taking a closer look at home, we have a stream of moisture that's heading up towards the southeastern areas of the state, and along the east and western areas of the Bering, they were full cloud covered across the entire area with this low pressure here streaming plenty of moisture, and upper level disturbances bring a lot of rain again to the Alaska Peninsula north to the Pribilof. So putting this into motion, you can see the moisture stream across the southeast. Moisture is actually pulling all across the state, making it a very humid, warm air mass across the central interior. And here's a good swath of moisture that's hanging out. Frontal boundary just kind of stalled and breaking apart south of the Brooks Range. Here's the surface map from earlier today. The boundary continuing to bring some rain just along the south slopes of the Brooks Range, and some afternoon showers are popping up. Earlier this afternoon we had some thunderstorm activity, and that was all on the Canadian side. Across the southeast, they saw rain moving in from the Panhandle on down towards Juneau along this frontal boundary that's just kind of crept across the eastern areas of the Gulf this afternoon. A larger swath of rain is around the main low pressure center from the western Aleutians on out towards the Pribilofs, with some lighter rain and fog areas from the Pribilof Islands and north. So expect for tonight this area of light rain and areas of fog across the Bering Strait and the northern Bering. Light rain will continue across the Aleutian chain with heavier rain just to the east side of the low pressure system. Across the southwest, shower activity mainly during the afternoon hours, a little bit more activity across the Kuskokwim Delta, and then we'll see the smoke across the central interior with a possibility for isolated thunderstorms mainly just along the eastern Alaska Range and north. Some light rain and fog will continue during the overnight hours across the Brooks Range, and then we'll also see fog overnight on the eastern Beaufort Seacoast, reducing visibilities down to 1 mile or less at times. Rain will continue to move into the southeast, so expect rain overnight. Should stay cloudy, but areas that might see breaks may experience some fog during the overnight hours. And light rain will continue also across the Gulf of Alaska, including the Kenai and Kodiak Island. And here on Thursday, we'll see another low pressure system, a weak one, but it'll move up from the North Pacific, bringing another round of showers to Kodiak Island with a slow eastward progression. And then we'll see some light rain showers continuing across the southeast during the morning hours with possible breaking up during the afternoon. During the afternoon hours, the most activity will be across the southern half of the state with isolated thunderstorms along the Copper River Valley, the eastern Alaska Range, and just north. Continued fog conditions as a colder air mass moves in along the Arctic coast here, and across the Arctic and the northwestern coast, expect gusty winds between 20 to 35 miles per hour, mainly out of the east. And then across the Bering for tomorrow, we'll see the patchy fog, not much change in the weather system. This low pressure system will just slowly bring that front that's going across the Aleutians a little bit further to the east. And then weak surface ridging across the eastern areas of the Bering will keep fog in across the western coastal areas. And then as we head into your Friday forecast, not a lot of change, just more moisture spinning around this low pressure out here in the Bering. So patchy fog and rain for all of the Bering locations, the Aleutians, and the Alaska Peninsula will be getting into a little bit more rain as we head into Friday. Also, Friday, the southeast will see a bit of rain as this North Pacific low begins to push in, and we'll see this onshore flow bringing another round of light rain through the day on Friday. Now, across the southern areas will mainly start out dry, and this green swath will mainly be diurnally driven, so afternoon showers with some isolated thunderstorms along this warm thermal trough that's along the Copper River Valley and just along the eastern Alaska Range. Drier to the north on Friday across the Brooks Range, we might see some showers, and fog conditions still continuing across the eastern Beaufort Seacoast. Now taking a look at your temperatures from today, was fairly cool, just like it was yesterday. Temperatures staying near normal, mainly in the mid-60s across much of the mainland, with temperatures dropping into the, only making it up into the upper 50s across the Gulf Coast, 55 there at Homer, and on over towards Yakutat, 58. A little bit cooler in the southeastern areas where they saw a little bit more rain, but warmer south of Juneau as they had some breaks in the clouds earlier in the day. Across the interior areas, they were up near 70 with high temperatures at Huslia reaching 70 during the afternoon. And then Barrow had dropped quickly to 38 degrees by 3 o'clock this afternoon. So mainly in the lower 40s across the Arctic coast, increasing to the mid-50s as you head down towards the Seward Peninsula. Across the southwestern coastal areas, mainly in the mid-50s, and across the Bering and the Aleutian chain, they mainly saw temperatures in the upper 40s to lower 50s. For overnight lows tonight, not going to see too much change across the Bering and Aleutians, with lows dropping down into the mid-40s. And then across the southwest, they're going to be hanging out in the upper 40s to mid-50s, as the interior locations will be in the upper 40s to lower 50s as well. And down along the coastal areas, warmest probably in the southeast with temperatures in the mid to upper 50s. Along the Brooks Range and north, the coolest temperatures will be in the upper 30s to the lower 40s. And as we head into your day tomorrow, that trough of warm air is going to continue across the interior with temperatures reaching a little bit warmer tomorrow. Some breaks in the clouds late in the day will allow temperatures to reach up into the mid-70s, staying cooler along the Arctic coast in the mid-40s with warmer temperatures across the northwest in the mid-50s to lower 60s. Southwest again will see temperatures in the mid-60s, and the chain will be again in the upper 40s to lower 50s. All across the Gulf coastal areas expect temperatures at least near 60, like I said, with the warmest across the southeast in the mid-60s. Now looking at your flying conditions for tomorrow, we'll see better conditions across the central interior where the smoke is not reducing visibilities, but we'll see IFR conditions in the morning across the southeast with the rain, possibly improving to MVFR during the afternoon, and then areas to south central seeing MVFR improving to VFR later in the day. We'll see mainly MVFR and IFR as well across the northern coastal areas, and the bearing with the low pressure out there will change between IFR and MVFR through the day. Looking at your passes in more depth, we'll see Anaktuvuk go from MVFR to VFR early, as well as Adigan Pass will go MVFR to VFR. And Lake Clark and Merrill Pass will be MVFR to VFR later in the day, and Rainy will go MVFR to VFR. And Windy will be MVFR to VFR, as well as Isabel will be MVFR to VFR with possible isolated afternoon thunderstorms, and also Mentasta with MVFR to VFR. And better conditions for the afternoon for Tanita going to VFR later in the day. And Portage will be MVFR and IFR on the east entrance, possibly improving in the afternoon. Chilkoot and White Pass will start out MVFR, improving during the afternoon to VFR. And your freezing levels for tomorrow is going to be 8,000 feet across the eastern areas of the state to 10,000 feet, pretty much statewide. And then across the Bering, you'll see the coolest temperatures around 6,000 to 8,000 feet. Looking at your icing, your main concerns are going to be around the low pressure system, but light icing conditions above 6,000 feet, with possible icing above 10,000 feet across the southeast and across the Arctic above 10,000 feet. Looking at your jet stream for tomorrow, mainly an easterly flow with the main jet stream staying just south of the Aleutian chain, not really pushing any of the low pressure systems anywhere. And this flow here is just going to hold up the flow. So not a whole lot of change or amplification of the pattern. So here's this low pressure system well wrapped in itself. A stacked low pressure system there on the western Bering with the strongest winds between 20 and 30 knots across the Bering. So a light flow across the mainland with light south 10 to 15 knots across much of the state, and an easterly flow across the Arctic coast at 15 knots, and a westerly flow across the southeastern areas. And the 3,000 foot winds, very much the same, very light across the central areas of the state, and the strongest winds on the eastern areas of the low pressure system. So the only areas of turbulence will be around the low pressure system at 6,000 feet, and in just a moment we'll be back with your marine forecast.
Weather balloons here at Fairbanks International Airport are released by the Weather Service twice a day, and the timing of those releases are such that they are coordinated with all the other releases around the world. And that data then, which provides a vertical profile of temperature and relative humidity and pressure in the atmosphere, is then integrated into the forecast models run by the Weather Service.
How can you forecast the temperatures when an inversion is present? It is a difficult puzzle. In Fairbanks, often the weather forecast says today, clear skies, high temperatures from 20 below to 10 above, coldest in the valley and mildest in the hills. A 30-degree range. This is not uncommon in the interior winter. It's a difficult puzzle to try to put very precise numbers. We need a broad range because within that shallow layer, you go from such cold temperatures to such warm temperatures. That's just the way it is here in the inhabited elevations of interior Alaska. Well, anything you want to forecast, including a temperature inversion, has to be studied. You have to learn how the inversion works in order to forecast its future behavior. And part of learning how it works involves gathering data. And every day out at the Fairbanks International Airport, a weather balloon is launched. On the end of the balloon is a thermometer, up it goes, and we get the vertical profile of temperature in the atmosphere. And that's real good data. You can see the inversion with that. Problem is, the weather balloon only goes up twice a day. And for forecasting, detecting and forecasting the jet stream, which operates on broad spatial and temporal scales, twice a day is for most purposes adequate. However, down here in this fine spatial scale right in urban Fairbanks, we need more than twice a day to really understand the inversion, especially its formation and its dissipation.
So the weather balloons that are released at Fairbanks International are timed with all those other global releases, and they are not actually at times which are very dynamically active here in Fairbanks, which is another reason that we're interested in doing this experiment with an aircraft and also additional weather balloon releases to sample some of those more dynamically active times of the day.
Basically, in preparing the sondes, you have to take the sonde out of the package, prepare the sensors, and then you'll fill up the weather balloon, then need to calibrate the instrument inside. So that's the most important part of balloon preparation. So when we're calibrating the instrument, we make sure that the temperature of the sensor is realistic with the temperature either of the room or outside, wherever the sonde is being calibrated, as well as pressure, making sure that's at our level, and also the relative humidity, that looks realistic. We use these weather balloons that when they're filled up with helium, they're approximately 6 feet wide. And by the time that they reach the top of the atmosphere where the balloon pops, they're about 20 feet wide. So they're huge. It's hard to even imagine. After we get clearance from the FAA, we'll go outside, take the radio sonde, attach it to the balloon, and then make sure there aren't any planes going by just in case, and let her go. And the computer inside actually picks up the signal automatically. It'll tell you exactly when the balloon was launched, and the data will come processing in from there. After we launch the balloon, I'll go back inside the building and to make sure that the data that's coming in on the computer looks realistic, making sure the pressure decreases with height, the relative humidities look realistic, and in my cases, looking at temperature inversion, that the temperature is increasing with height. Typically in the atmosphere, we see temperature decreasing with height, but in these special cases, that's what I'm looking for. And then I can watch as the temperature progresses vertically into the atmosphere, as that sensor's rising, and I can see where the top of the inversion layer is. So the National Weather Service currently launches weather balloons twice a day, but I wanted to launch weather balloons more frequently than that to see what was happening between those launches. So I wanted to take a look at what's happening between that 4 p.m. launch and that 4 a.m. launch, and then what's happening between the 4 a.m. and the 4 p.m. So I launched these weather balloons every 2 to 3 hours to gain a better temporal resolution of what's going on in the atmosphere.
Our research asked the question, what will surface-based temperature inversions look like in Alaska over the next 100 years? And the primary tool for studying future projections are global climate models. In fact, they're the only tool. But they're not perfect for answering our question because we're interested in information over a city landscape scale, which is a few miles, 5 miles, 10 miles. Global climate models provide information on a 100-mile scale. So we need to get that information from this coarse scale and downscale it to a higher resolution so it's useful for us. And the way we do that is we take climate information from the global climate model and we feed it into our regional model, which has a domain over Alaska at a resolution of, say, a few miles instead of hundreds of miles. And the large-scale climate comes from these global climate models, and then we run our simulation over Alaska. We have done regional downscaling simulations for 20 years in the 20th century, from 1979 to 1999. We've done 10 years from 2010 to 2019, and then from 2050 to 2059, and 2090 to 2099. So with the regional model, we've taken these 4 slices over time fed by the global climate model. And what we find, first of all, in the 20th century simulation is that the regional model does a much better job of simulating the vertical surface-based temperature inversions over Fairbanks and the other cities in Alaska. And as we go through the 21st century, those 3 other slices, as the global climate warms, we find that the temperature inversions in the lowest layer don't really change in strength. The strength stays the same, but the whole profile gets warmer. So this study provides a first look at what would be happening to temperature inversions in the future. We need to ask other questions like, how will this frequency change? Will they occur as often? Will the season be much shorter? There's a variety of other questions we need to ask to develop a better picture for how temperature inversions will change in the future. And our first cut answer that we have suggests that we'll still have to worry about the same sort of air quality issues because in the near surface, the strength of the inversion will be about the same.
Hello and welcome back to the show. Now on to your marine forecast. Take a looking at the sea ice edge. Pretty much open water across the northwestern coast back towards Kotzebue with a little bit of open water across towards Dead Horse. And then across the next few days might be a westerly shift in the ice edge. However, the melting will continue as we stay around normal for temperatures. Now, a very quiet day is expected across the waters in the southeast for Thursday and Friday. So if you're planning on heading out, probably a great day to do it. Light winds across the inner channels around 10 knots or less, and then a change of direction to the westerly direction across the southern areas and also across the outer waters. Inner channels will be around 2 to 3 feet for sea heights, and then we'll see 5-foot seas across the outer waters. And Friday, not too much change, very light wind speeds at least. We'll have variable wind direction across the inner channels with a little bit of a southerly wind as you head up towards the Lynn Canal and a change out of the northwest as you head down towards the Dixon entrance. Across the outer waters, also change of wind direction, very light, however, around 10 knots with the inner channels at 2-foot seas at the most, and then 4-foot seas across the outer waters. Across the south central area, the Gulf Coast along the west, it's going to be very light winds for you on Thursday, variable direction with the southerly flow up the Cook Inlet. We'll see seas across the Prince William Sound, Cook Inlet area between 2 and 3 feet, including Shelikof Strait, and the western Gulf waters will see between 4 to 5-foot seas there. Friday, not much change in the forecast. Variable winds across the area up to 10 knots and a southerly flow up the inlet with a 2 to 3-foot seas across most of the Shelikof Strait, Cook Inlet, Prince William Sound, and 2 to 4 feet across the western Gulf. Looking at your Alaska Peninsula, light winds across these locations between 10 to 15 knots out of the south to southwesterly direction. Bering will see 3 to 6-foot seas and 5 to 7 foot across the Pacific waters. For your Friday forecast, variable winds across most of the area, Bristol Bay out of the west at 10 knots, 3-foot seas on the Bering side and 5 to 6-foot seas on the Pacific side. Looking at your Aleutian chain, we will see small crafts across much of the area with winds out of the south direction, and then seas will be between 7 to 10 feet with the highest seas on the Pacific side. Heading into your Friday forecast, the strongest winds are going to be along the western Aleutian chain, and we'll see between 20 and 25 knots across the Aleutian chain. And then we'll see the seas a little bit higher out towards the west on this day, with again varying between 5 to 10 feet. Across the west coast on your Thursday, expect a south to southeasterly flow, and then up towards the Bering Strait, we'll see more of an easterly direction, all between 15 to 20 knots, with seas between 4 to 7 feet. And then as we head into your Friday, we'll see a little bit of a change of direction out of the southeast for most of the area, with again the easterly flow across the northern areas of the Bering, all between 10 to 20 feet. So light winds again for this area, between 3 to 6 foot seas on this day. Looking up towards the north, we'll see the strongest winds across the northwest coast, or the Chukchi Sea. We'll see an east to northeasterly flow with a change to northwesterly across the Kotzebue Sound, and stronger winds across the northern areas up to 15 to 20 knots as well, higher gusts there, and seas between 2 to 6 feet. Heading into your Friday, looking at primarily an east to northeasterly flow, stronger winds across the northwest coast, Kotzebue again out of the northwest 10 knots. Seas will be between 2 and 6 feet. Now a recap on the forecast for tonight: afternoon showers with possible thunderstorms across the eastern areas of the Alaska Range, and showers continuing mainly south of the Brooks Range. Fog conditions across the east area, and also at the southeast we'll see rain as well. Low pressure will continue to spin rain across the Aleutians through your day on Thursday, with afternoon showers and thunderstorms mainly across the mountain areas of the south. We'll see heavier showers across Juneau continue into Friday, and we hope you'll join us again so we can update you on the weekend forecast.
These forecasts are to be used for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating. Alaska Weather is made possible by the following sponsors.
The National Weather Service.